Okay, we're going to look at here our projectile properties. This is just stuff that we need to know here. It's stuff like max range, angle, angles for max range itself, max range changes rather. And then shapes. So let's start off easiest to hardest. Let's just look at shapes. If I have a line and I have an object that I am, I don't know, punting, kicking, throwing. Without air resistance, this is going to make a perfect parabola. Okay, it's going to be symmetric on both sides, right about the middle. With air resistance, this looks different. It starts off kind of the same and then it just gets smushed. It's like we brought this edge in and we smushed it. That's what happens with air resistance. The object just slows down in flight and then it drops off. That's what we talked about. If you go to a Pirate game or baseball game, that object just looks like a home run and then it just drops into the outfield. So that's the idea of the shapes. Something else we can look at has to do with the angle. It turns out if I shoot an object off at an angle of 70 degrees, and let's say it has a velocity of 10 meters per second, what this object will do without air resistance, this is without air resistance, it'll make a nice arc and then plump right into the ground. Thunk. If I take another object, shoot it off at 10 meters per second, but this time at 20 degrees, it's going to go boo, thunk, and it's going to hit the exact same spot. It turns out any two congruent angles, so two angles that add up to 90, are going to land at the same location without air resistance. So 70 plus 20, that'll work. 50 plus 40, that'll work. 30 plus 60, that'll work. Whatever. Two angles that add up to 90, gonna hit at the same location. One of the other things we can look at, and this is one of the harder points that people mess up a lot, is let's say I have an object that I'm shooting off with some velocity. Okay, let's pretend it's 10 meters per second. And this object goes, let's say it gets to a max height here of, I don't know, 40. That's probably not right. It gets to some max height, let's say 40, and then it goes so far. Let's say, well, here, let's just say it's shooting off at V. Okay, gets to high of 40, and it travels, I don't know, let's just do this. It gets to some max height, let's just call it 10. It travels some distance, let's just call it 40. Okay, I don't know if those probably not right, but let's just pretend. If we have another object, we shoot it 3 times its initial velocity. So if the initial velocity was 10 here, for example, this would be like 30. It's 3 times as much. The object doesn't go 3 times as far. What you need to do is you need to square that quantity and then multiply it by how far the object initially went. So 3 squared is 9. So what we're doing is we're taking 40 times 9, and that's how far this new object at the new velocity went, or same object, different new velocity. That's 360. So this is actually going to go and then wind up over here somewhere. It went 9 times as far. On the flip side, you do the same thing for the max height. If this went 10, this is going to go 3 squared 9 times as high. So this is going to go up 90. Okay, that works if you're going faster. If you're going slower, like the half, you would take 1/2 squared to get 1/4, and it works like that. So that's something you need to think about there. And the last thing we're going to talk about are angles for maximum ranges. If you want to shoot an object as far as possible, without air resistance, you want to shoot it off at exactly 45 degrees. That gives you an equal amount of x and y velocities. It optimizes everything. You go the farthest. If you have air, everything depends on the shape of your object. It takes a lot of testing to figure out what the max range angle is, but what you do know is that it's always less than 45, whatever it is. Okay? Maybe it's a golf ball, you shoot those at about like 10 to 12 degrees. Maybe a football, you shoot at 30. Maybe a car, you shoot at 28. But you know that the angle is less than 45 degrees. So those are just some general projectile properties that you should know. If you mess that section up on the test, definitely look this over, because these are basic things that you should be able to do. Max ranges with and without air. How far an object goes based off of this quantity squared, you increase or decrease. Angles. And the shape of an object with air resistance and then without air resistance. Okay? So those are things that you should know. Best of luck on that.